So in today's video, I'm going to discuss about the high school examination, which essentially takes place at the end of class 10 or grade 10. And typically you have been preparing for this examination since you have entered your school. So right from grade 1. And this culminates in grades 9 and 10 when there is a huge amount of preparation for this particular examination. And this exam typically covers subjects such as social sciences, mathematics, science, some aspects of the humanities discipline and languages. So you may have 6 or 5 subjects which you need to study for this exam. So now I'll give you a few guidelines about this exam and how you can study for this exam so as to maximize your growth as a person and as a scholar. So I would say that you should study your textbooks very well and you should study as few books as you can. So again, some people make a mistake of studying a large number of books on a specific topic such as science. But in most cases, the prescribed textbook is sufficient for your study. This is especially true if your board brings out a book on the subject. So this is the case in many situations that there is a prescribed book brought out by the particular board which is setting the examination paper at the end of class 10. So in that case, it's very important to study this book very well, because there is a very high probability that all the questions in the examination will come from this particular book. The second thing is that people should give the same amount of importance to theory and practical aspects of the subject. So many people tend to take the practical slightly, and this is a mistake, because this is the time when you learn the importance of experiments and the art of being fastidious in the lab. So one should learn at this point the various traits such as taking measurements, doing experiments properly and in a meticulous manner, and also doing a good bookkeeping of the experimental results and writing short reports on the various experiments they have done. This is especially important because experimental results are often not tested directly in various examinations later in your life, such as standardized tests or competitive examinations. But if you have a fascination for experiments at this stage, this will tell you that you need to do a certain type of work. Maybe you need to become a scientist, or you need to get into fields which are more experimental in nature. So this is something you can figure out right at this high school stage about your future plans. The next point I have is that you should take good notes during the class. And this is because many of the books which are published for these subjects tend to be very substantial in size and scope. There is a lot of material which is covered in the book. There are a lot of historical notes. There are various examples and so on. But you need to condense all this information to a much shorter space. And essentially, if you have taken good notes during your class, then you have performed a feature extraction type of exercise from this whole data, and your notes will help you enormously when you prepare for your final examination. Now, if you are not able to take good notes in the class, you should at least make sure that you take notes from your book. So make sure that you condense the matter given in the book in your own words in much lesser quantity of writing, and this will again help you in preparing for this examination. The next issue is that you should try to do old papers. So this is very important that you get hold of the previous year's papers and you try to do them. And do not postpone this step till the very end. You should try to do these papers much before the whole year has come to an end. The reason is that it is very easy to solve a problem or to do questions when you know the context of the questions. So if you are reading a particular chapter in the science book or in the mathematics book, and you know the questions are coming from that chapter, it's very easy to do these questions. But when all these questions are jumbled up together and presented in a randomized fashion, then it becomes much more difficult to do these questions, because at that point you need to remember the theory, the equations, the formulas behind all these particular situations, and that is a much bigger task. So generally there is a saying that the whole is much greater than the sum of the parts. So this is certainly true in this case. Now also, if you do not know the context of a given question, it is much more difficult to do a question, and that is why I would say doing examinations which have been given in the previous years is important. And at this point, you may not have covered the entire syllabus for the whole paper, but you can do half the paper or even 1/4 of the paper, and this will give you good practice right in grades 9 as well as 10. Now, the second thing is that you should be prepared for questions which combine two different aspects of a subject. So, this is something which is typically tested, and good test creators try to test the fact that you have digested the subject matter very well by mixing two different themes. So maybe they take a part of a question from geometry and a different part from solution of some different type of mathematical problem, and then they mix these together, maybe progressions or something like that. Or you may take geometry and statistics and try to combine these issues. So again, these kind of questions are typically more difficult to answer, but they test the depth of understanding of a person in terms of his or her grasp of the entire subject. Now, beside this, I would suggest that you create a study pattern which breaks your day into 2 or 3 parts. And between these parts, you should put in some sleep time. So this actually helps you in terms of retaining the material which you have studied. So one of the patterns which I used to use is to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and then start studying, and then maybe take a long nap in the afternoon. So essentially this breaks your day into 2 parts, and so this typically helps in retention as well as in recharging your brain cells, because you get this extra time to sleep in the midday. So again, I would recommend these 2 sleep slots to improve your study. Now, the next thing is that you should take a break from your studies every now and then. So you should try to take part in some games, and again try to take part in games which involve some kind of motor skills, such as playing something such as badminton, cricket, tennis, soccer, football, table tennis, or something like that. Or you may go for a walk or a run. Try to not spend time in playing video games, because that involves very similar work to that which is involved in studying. And again, your eyes need to take some time off from the studying which they are doing. So I would recommend, don't watch video games, don't watch TV, and don't see movies at this particular point. Maybe you can permit yourself 1 or 2 movies during the span of a year. Finally, I would say that do not study too much during grades 9 and 10th. And that is because if you are studying an enormous amount of time at this point, you are going to be burnt out, and you are going to find that when you go to the next 2 classes, the size of the books is going to explode, and you will have difficulty in coping with those 2 particular classes. So class 12 is a completely different ball game compared to what you have in class 10th. So what I would suggest is that you study a lot, but do not study as much as the people in class 12 do. Because if you do that at this point, then you will be burnt out later and you will peak too soon. So again, you should not peak in class 10, you should peak in class 12, and that's when the competitive exams and all are there, and you should peak at that time. But spend grades 9 and 10 trying to figure out which is your predilection. You are interested in arts or science or commerce or math, and you need to decide at this stage whether you want to become an engineer, a doctor, a business professional, a scientist, a lawyer, or a painter, or anything such as these kind of disciplines. So again, to discover yourself fully at this point, do not restrict yourself totally to study. Also take part in some of these activities which are out of your school setting, maybe music, maybe sports, maybe painting, writing, and so on. So these will give you a good concept about what is the particular career you need to take at the end of class 10. So these were some points I wanted to share with you, and I hope this video was useful to you. So again, stay tuned to my channel for further videos on such topics. Thank you very much.